Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards, welcoming you to InFocus, a weekly program that takes a closer look at what's happening within and across the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis, like scores of countries around the world, rely heavily on imported fossil fuels to power our homes, our businesses, our schools, and our vehicles. This dependence leaves us vulnerable to global price hikes from external shocks. Now, the government is working apace to change that narrative by transforming the Twin Island Federation into a sustainable island state, with a bold commitment to achieve 100% renewable electricity generation in the next 5 years. The Energy Unit is on the front line of these transformative changes, and of course the Energy Unit is within the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, Utilities, et al. Now, joining us today to share more about these initiatives is Denasio Frank. He is an energy officer within the Energy Unit, and later we'll be joined by Bertill Browne, who is the director of the Energy Unit. Stay with us for InFocus for a discussion on powering the sustainable future.
The consultancy which we launched today will develop a roadmap for modernizing our electricity generation, transmission, and distribution systems, ensuring that they are ready to support a future that is reliable, future that is affordable, that is resilient, and powered by our very own renewable energy resources. St. Kitts and Nevis continues to make a bold and ambitious commitment. We pledge to achieve 100% renewable electricity generation by 2030, while reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 61% compared to the 2010 levels. That is indeed ambitious.
Thanks for staying with us, and allow me now to welcome to the program for the very first time Mr. Denasio Frank. So welcome, it's good to have you here.
It's good to be here. Good afternoon.
And we have a lot to discuss, of course. I'm not sure how many persons are aware of the Energy Unit and what its roles are and how it functions. So I think we're going to start there. Tell us a bit about the Energy Unit.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I am the energy officer within the Energy Unit. The Energy Unit's role is essentially to be the policy specialist for the and for energy within the government. Our role is to essentially implement what we call the National Energy Policy. That is what essentially established the Energy Unit. We act as regulators in many instances in the absence of a formalized regulator. And so we do a lot of initiative, for example, CARICOM Energy Month, that is under us. We do a lot of studies to essentially create policies that govern the energy sector within the Federation.
Mm-hmm. And how long has the unit existed?
About 2017 is when it was established on the recommendation of the National Energy Policy.
Any major milestones that persons may be aware of that you hear initially and you say, oh, they're responsible for that?
Well, firstly, I mentioned CARICOM Energy Month. That's something that we do every November. We have a lot of activities every year, and it's a regional event, and that is something that we pull off every single year. Secondly, we just launched the Solarize and Drive. That's a major initiative that will compensate persons for renewable energy that they produce, and the drive is going to incentivize electric vehicles as well. We have done a lot of studies for different elements of the energy sector. We have done training and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. And you spoke about CARICOM Energy Month. That's in November each year. How is the participation for that?
Well, it varies. Some activities we get a lot of participation. For example, we have had several energy fairs. We did bulb drives. We did one where it was a motorcade, and then we started doing it within the energy fair in this square, Independence Square. And for those activities, we get a lot of participation. Some activities we don't get as much, but it all varies on what people are really interested in.
When you flick a light switch, you expect that there is power.
Yes.
How important is energy to persons? Because I think we take it for granted a lot of the times.
Well, it's the main driver of the economy, realistically. It powers every single sector, no pun intended, but it powers every single sector. So it is very important for persons to be able to access energy, and that is one of the recommendations in the energy policy, that we have affordable energy, access to energy, clean energy, and this is very important for the economy.
Tell us a bit about that energy policy.
So the energy policy was developed in 2011 and revised in 2014. It outlines, the targets for energy, how we go about it. It recommends that there's an energy unit, for example, which is what essentially established the energy unit in 2017. And it essentially lays out the government's plan for how we develop energy in the Federation.
And that's typically a 5-year plan, I believe. Most plans are normally 5 years.
It was a 5-year plan. The target was for 2020, but it's now being revised because, of course, 2020 has already passed, so it's now being revised as part of a project that we're doing.
And so how does it reflect the current changes? Because, of course, as you said, it was introduced in 2011, of course, and it's been revised there. But how does it transition to what is currently happening now, especially when you consider climate change?
Well, there were recommendations in the policy as well for renewable energy in 2014. And so that is a lot of what we're doing now in terms of pushing those initiatives and activities for the future. So, of course, it made a target for 100% renewable energy, and it gave recommendations on how to pursue that. And that is what we are looking into. For example, we're looking at solar, geothermal, wind, waste energy, any domestic renewable energy that we have access to in the Federation is what it makes recommendations to push.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about the relationship between the energy unit and SCELEC, which of course is the St. Kitts Electricity Company Limited, and also NEVLEC, which is the Nevis Electricity Company Limited?
Well, we have a very good relationship with them. In fact, the director is actually seconded from SCELEC, and so we have a very good relationship.
The director of the energy unit?
Yes, he's seconded from SCELEC. So you would probably see him very often in his SCELEC uniform, but he acts as the director of the energy unit. And of course, we have a very good relationship with the engineers at SCELEC and the staff as well. And of course, we also have a very good relationship with NEVLEC. We work very closely with them as the federal energy unit. So we have a very good relationship with SCELEC, NEVLEC. We don't really make any decisions unless we get their input, because of course both are government-owned institutions, and so we have to make sure that they are on board with a lot of the activities.
Right, and so last week we saw the launch of the Renewable Energy Transition Roadmap. Tell us a bit about this roadmap and what's intended purposes for.
Well, the roadmap, as I mentioned, we do a lot of studies, and one of the things that we needed to do is create a roadmap for how we transition to 100% renewable energy by 2030, because the target now is by 2030 we want to achieve 100% renewable energy generation from electricity generation from renewables. And so what we're going to do is essentially a study to develop that roadmap. There's going to be what they call an integrated renewable plan for St. Kitts and Nevis in collaboration with the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. All of that will be encompassed in the study that they're going to be doing. And it will be done by, Green in the Islands is the agency that is going to be implementing in collaboration with the UNDP, who is one of our partners for this project.
And the goals of this plan?
To develop the roadmap. So the roadmap is going to essentially show what is the optimal mix for renewables in the Federation. So whether it says 50% geothermal, 40% solar, and so on and so forth, that is going to be brought out in the roadmap.
Let me back up, because you just said renewables.
Yes.
What type of renewables is the government targeting?
Domestically available resources. So geothermal is a very, very big one. In fact, if we're going to achieve 100%, we're going to need geothermal, because we have a good resource. Once you can access that, that covers a lot of the mix. Solar, of course, we have solar available across the island. Wind energy, waste to energy, sources like that.
So those wind energy and waste to energy, of course, those things have been spoken about for many, many, many years. Is that something that is practical for us to get into? Because, of course, the 50 megawatt farm, the solar farm, that is on track, and geothermal, the government is investing heavily to get that done. So one may ask is that, should there be that mix, the waste to energy, because of course that's something new, and also the wind development. I'm not sure of the potential, so maybe you can talk a bit about the potential of those two, and if it's really practical for us to pursue.
Well, it's very much practical. There is actually a wind farm in Nevis already, so it's not a resource that we are foreign to. There was a project being developed for the Bellevue area, which has a very good wind resource. The whole Eastern Corridor has a very good wind resource. So there have been projects for wind turbines, wind farms in the Federation. As it relates to waste to energy, it would be good for sustaining the lifetime of the landfill as well.
Right.
So these are resources. We are making the best of the resources that we have and getting energy from that, which is sustainable in the long run.
And who are the players in this roadmap?
Well, government stakeholders, sustainable development, the private sector. Chamber was involved in the launch that we did. Sustainable development, to a large extent, marine resources, the Ministry of Environment, climate action. Those are the main players for the roadmap.
And based on the discussion, it was held last week, as I mentioned, so
yes.
It was for 2 days. It was on a Wednesday and a Thursday. What are some of the key points that came from that consultation that was really mentioned that this is what needs to be owned? And then you touched on the mix of renewables as one aspect of it.
Well, some of the things that we just looked at how they're going to go about the consultation or the study. They looked at the methodology for how they're going to go about it. They looked at the governance structure. And we've had meetings, regarding how we're going to set up the governance structure for that study. Those are the things that come to mind right now. I'm a bit hazy on exactly all the points that came out of it, but those are the main points that came out of it. And they gave an overview of what they're going to do for the study. And so, yeah, those are the main points.
How long is the study?
It's for about a year.
Okay. And it will involve consultations with different, imagine, stakeholders. Can you give us a sense of who that would be?
You mean the stakeholders?
Yeah, who would be a part of the consultation? Because in order to produce a roadmap, you have to find out what businesses or what institutions, what their needs are, in order to plan for the recommendations, in order to, of course, gain data. It's important that all plans are data-driven. So if you could give us a sense of who's going to be touched on, right?
Right, okay, so Skellig, Nevlek, for sure, they have to be a part of that. They have a lot of the data. As I say, sustainable development, environment, climate action, in some elements, marine resources, because part of it, I forgot to mention, part of it is to the interconnection between St. Kitts and Nevis. They're going to be looking at that as well.
And that would be the grid.
That's
basically,
the grid, yeah.
So for instance, if geothermal is developed, how we can channel power to St. Kitts
between St. Kitts and Nevis, yes,
right.
yes. So that will be encompassed in the study. So we're going to have persons from the environment, because we're going to have to look at the environment in the area, marine resources, maybe maritime, the private sector, as I mentioned before, even the public will have public consultations as well. Civil society was invited. There were representatives in the meeting, and of course persons with disabilities and social development, those persons will be involved.
So it's not just for institutions and businesses. There's also the role and the feedback that's needed from ordinary persons in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Because it's a wide encompassing, as I said, energy encompasses all other sectors, and so we'll have input from all the sectors as much as we can.
Now, that workshop, I appreciate also that there was some key international and regional agencies that were playing an important part. What's their role? Is it just to come and help to launch the project? What will they be doing, and who are they?
Well, UNDP is the main financer for the project. Our project is being developed as a part of another project, and so they're the main financer for this study. Green in the Islands, GTI, they are a European-based organization. They're going to be doing this study for us. Euroclima is another organization that is a part of this study. So those are the three main partners for the study that we're going to be doing.
And I believe that is where the funding will be coming from in terms of Euroclima. That's the European
UNDP.
Union. Right. Okay. Let's talk a bit about now the benchmarks that will be a part of this roadmap in order to assess the process. And how do you measure that success as well too?
Yeah, we probably have to come back on that. I don't quite remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I any projects, to be very honest.
Okay. All right. So what we'll do then is that we're going to take our first break. Mr. Browne is here, so we'll be sure to invite him into our conversation, and then also we'll move into our discussion also with Solarize and Drive. Those were two initiatives that you mentioned at the top that the government is particularly pleased with in terms of the way it can help to transform St. Kitts and Nevis and pushing that sustainable island state agenda that the government has identified. So we want to have that discussion next. All right. Stay with us, viewers and listeners. We'll be right back with more In Focus.
Growing up in school, we would always be told that St. Kitts and Nevis does not have any natural resources. We learned of Guyana that had lumber and gold. We learned of Trinidad that had oil and natural gas. We learned of Jamaica that had bauxite and also lumber. But we were told we didn't have any natural resources here. But in my short life so far, I have lived to see where we have our own gold, our own bauxite, our own lumber, our own water in another form, our own resource in renewable energy. We have more renewable energy than we can ever dream of using. And so that is our gold mine there.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to In Focus. We continue our discussion with the Energy Unit officials from there, and we are joined by the Director of the unit, Mr. Browne. Mr. Browne, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Right. So, as we were discussing with Mr. Frank before we took the break, we were talking a bit about the roadmap, and it's for the Renewable Energy Transition Roadmap. That's what it's actually called. And we spoke about the benchmarks. How do you measure the development of the roadmap, and also how do you measure success? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, the roadmap has several clear outputs. One of them is a sustainability index. As you know, we aspire to be a sustainable island state, and so that would help us to determine how far along the path that we are in. That you could probably think of it as a stock index that would rise as we move further and further towards our goal. So once that index is developed, that is one output that we could use. The other one is a grid code. A grid code is something that utilities have that govern the way other suppliers, when they move to renewable energy, it's not just the utilities supplying the grid. You have, for example, the wind farm, solar farm, and so forth coming onto the grid, and it outline how they connect to the grid, both the procedures and the technical requirements for how they think. So that's another output that we look at. There's also a grid modernization aspect of it. So that would be a report detailing what we have to do to upgrade, especially our transmission and distribution infrastructure to accommodate renewable energy. And Denasio a while ago talked about the interconnection. So all of that would be included in the upgrade. Because those, if we want to go fully 100% renewable, some upgrade is required to our transmission and distribution infrastructure. When we say transmission and distribution, I'm speaking about those poles and wires and so that you see out in the field. Okay, and then you have, even though it's called a roadmap, inside of it is a roadmap itself, which would outline the steps that we take, a time frame and so forth. So once we get those, we know that the process is moving along. And of course, all the reports and so will be reviewed by the stakeholders, by us, by SCELEC, by NEVLEC, and feedback to the consultant until we are satisfied that we got what we wanted.
Modernizing the grid, you mentioned that was a key point in the roadmap. That must be incredibly difficult. What would need to be changed, ideally, off the top of your head, to include those renewables? Because to my mind, I'm not a technical person. The fuel right now, well, the power is coming from fossil fuels, as mentioned, the generators. So what changes would need to be made to facilitate renewables?
Well, first, one of the things that most likely will have to be made is we increase the transmission voltage. Right now we transmit at 11,000 volts. But the higher the voltage you have, the better you are at interconnecting renewable energy. So one of the things that has been discussed, it's not finalized yet, is to increase the transmission voltage to 69 kilovolts. The other thing, some of the conductors have to be made larger in order to think. You have the interconnection has to be done in order to get the geothermal connected to St. Kitts. So those are just some of the things that has to be done. Some of the agents, some of them are old, so we have to put in new conductors.
And I imagine, of course, with the scourge of climate change, we must be resilient. We must be able to react to what is happening now. And a big part of it, I know, that the government has discussed for over a period of time now, would be having those lines, the overhead lines, underground.
Yes, the overhead lines are susceptible to hurricane. Not even a full-fledged hurricane, even when we have a storm, as you and the viewers would be aware, we lose electricity, and that's because the winds damage the overhead lines. So we are thinking we would like to put as much of that infrastructure underground. A lot of it is already underground. The backbone, we have the whole of the Basti area underground, mostly. We have, for the transmission section, all the way to Cairn, and on the western side, we got as far as Challengers that is just the transmission section underground. We would like to put more underground, but putting the infrastructure underground is more expensive than putting it overhead. So we have to get the financing for that.
Right. And in terms of this, any threats that you would identify to the roadmap that would prevent it from being completed on time, or would limit, as you mentioned, the stock comparison of it rising? Are there any threats that you would see that would slow down the progress or cause it to become stagnant to an extent?
You mean implementing the roadmap?
Right.
Yes. Well, one of the things, a lot of what we have to do to implement it requires money. So the financing, the funding is one of the things that could prevent it from moving forward. Another thing that could prevent it, and we are working on that, is the human capacity, our ability to having the personnel, the qualified personnel, and the number of persons to actually implement the roadmap. So training, we are actively doing training, and also we will have to depend to some extent, a large extent, on consultants to work with us with respect to that. So those are two things that I could think of right now as to what could slow down the implementation.
Anything you care to add, Mr. Franks?
Well, the ability to acquire data, quality data, is something that could potentially slow down the implementation as well.
And of course, data is a challenge for not just St. Kitts and Nevis, for all of us across the region. We're not very good at it. And in order to make informed decisions, you must have that data as we established. The question then is asked, because the plan that was outlined by the government, and that would be the minister responsible, Honorable Conrad Maynard, he said that the plan has a target of reducing carbon emissions by 61% by 2030. And as I mentioned at the top, that's 5 years. And also having 100% renewable energy that is powered from the grid. The complete electricity generation is 100% again renewable by 2030. Are these goals realistic?
Yes, they are realistic. There's no guarantee that we meet them, but they are realistic. For one, we think that we could get the geothermal online before 2030. And if we get the geothermal online, we could get a large amount of energy from that. The other one, there's a 50 megawatt solar farm with 30 megawatt hours of battery that tenders are already out for developers to develop it. So we could get that online by the end of 2027. Now, the Solarize program, which where you have households installing solar PV, that could add a fairly large amount, well, up to 5 megawatts of solar energy to the grid, and that could happen gradually or between now and 2030. So it is realistic, but we have to do a lot of work to make sure that we achieve it. We can't just sit back and think that it will happen like that.
You mentioned Solarize.
Yes.
Now, it's a catchy acronym, really and truly, and it stands for Solar Integration for Sustainable Energy Initiatives, which is Solarize. I want you to break it down for us, and of course, Mr. Frank, you're welcome to join in as well. Break it down so that the ordinary person can understand what Solarize is, what it is attempting to achieve.
Well, it's, as I said before, attempting to add renewable energy to our grid, solar energy. And we just don't want the big developers come in and put down solar farms. We need the ordinary person to be involved in the energy revolution, households. So we are giving them the opportunity, we are incentivizing them. We are allowing them to install solar panels, most likely on the roof, but it could be ground mounted, and they would consume what those solar panels produce. And if they're excess, they export it to the grid, and Skelec pay them for the energy that they export to the grid.
And the billing model, can you tell us a bit about that billing model? Because you said Skelec will pay them. Most persons, when they pay, they may think money. So tell us a bit about how the billing model works.
Well, it will be an credit arrangement, a credit. So when you export to the grid, you get a credit, and it will be 11 cents per kilowatt hour.
Let me just interrupt you. There's a graphic that we have that we can put on the screen so that persons will be able to, who are looking at the program, they'll be able to follow along as well too.
Yes. So you would get 11 cents credit for each unit of energy that you put on the grid, measured in kilowatt hours. Now, that credit will be subtracted from your bill. If it comes to more than your bill, say it's zero out your bill and then your bill goes negative, we will hold that credit. So we won't be giving you money every month if you pass the amount. But given the way it works, most people will not be producing more energy to the grid than what they consume. So the credits will be most of the time used up every month. But if it's not used up, it will be there on your bill, and over time, there may be a mechanism where you get it back at the end of the year on an annual basis, if it's a large amount, if it's
All right, Mr. Frank, perhaps you can jump in there and speak to us a bit about that model as well. So it's something that you would have presented at the launch of Solar Rise that took place, and because again, there are some persons who are saying, if as Mr. Browne mentioned, that I might be producing enough power that I can just run, especially if you're a single person or a bachelor. You got a small little bachelor pad, you're not using too much electricity devices and stuff, and so it may not benefit me. I could look at it that I might be generating enough power that I need, so then that credit that Skelec has for me, I'm not being able to use it. So does it sort of defeats the purpose?
I wouldn't say that. The idea of the net billing and the Solar Rise is that, and it's supported by public consultations that we had, persons want to be able to use what they produce. The alternative was a buy or sell arrangement where you sell everything that you produce to the grid and Skelec compensates you for that. And when you want to use any energy, then you buy that from Skelec. But what persons wanted was, and they very much rallied for it, was that they can consume whatever they produce on their own premises, and then if they have any excess, then they sell it to Skelec. And so that is the option that we and Skelec agreed that we were going to do for the Solar Rise. And of course, the tariff reflects a balance between what the public wanted and what Skelec is prepared to offer. But yes, so the idea is you consume what you want, what you use, and if you have any excess, then you sell to the grid.
Why is there a 5?
Let me just say something, because I think I didn't fully explain it. You could get credits back, but it's not a monthly thing, it's an annual thing. And you could also transfer credits to other accounts.
Really?
Yes.
So there you go.
Yes, you could also transfer credit to account. So what I said wasn't, I don't think I fully explained it earlier. Yes.
So if I live in a household and my mother lives in a different household,
yes,
I can transfer my credits to her, which
yes,
in a sense, so while I'm generating enough energy that would suit my needs, and she may have a bill, then I could say, okay, well, put that credit on her account, and so it would lessen, perhaps, depending on how much it is, eliminate a bill.
Yes.
It's very useful. Okay, what is the 5 megawatt capacity cap?
The solar energy, wind energy, they're intermittent. The sun only shines during the day, and even during the day, a cloud could come overhead, block out the sun, and cause the output to drop. The wind, the same thing. One time it's blowing hard, and next time it's not blowing. And we refer to it as intermittent energy, renewable energy. And it poses some technical challenges for the utility, in that when the solar output drop, the generators at the power station has to pick up, and when it goes up the generation, and it's very stressful on the generators, shortening the lifespan. So it has to be monitored. Careful studies have to be done. It could be mitigated by batteries and other storage types, but we have to make sure that we do it correctly, and we set a limit and monitor it, and then after, when it reached that stage, we could make a determination if we could take more. So we don't go all out and cause problems. We do it in stages.
And just to add to that, there's currently a project that was launched recently, the Green Energy Transition Demonstration Project, in collaboration with the Republic of China, Taiwan. They're going to be installing a system at Skelec, and part of that project is the monitoring of the impact of renewable energy on the grid. And there's training and studies as part of that project as well that will allow us that information to make informed decisions on how we go about the Solar Rise project in the future.
Do we have a sense of how much of our electricity generation now comes from renewable energy as opposed to fossil fuel?
We know it's less than 10%, much less, but we don't have ideas to exactly how much. That is because the people with rooftop solar not registered. So under Solar Rise, we would like to get everybody registered, and then we could monitor and know how much is actually produced and what percentage.
So what I'm hearing then is that Solar Rise is not just for the businesses, there are some big businesses in town that you can see that there are solar panels on their rooftops that feeds, I imagine, their establishment.
Yes.
But the idea is to turn everyone, essentially, every household as well, because that's the structure that is mostly across St. Kitts and Nevis houses.
Yes.
That to take that and to convert that to produce the energy. Does it impact persons who have a solar panel? Or is it also going to include persons who are going to be installing solar panels?
Those who already have solar panel installed and those who plan to install in the future. Everybody.
So how does one apply? How does one get on that program?
Okay, if you already have solar panels installed, we have something that we call the golden hour, where you send in your application. There's an application form. There is you request an inspection and you pay an inspection fee. How much it is?
$150.
$150 to Skellig, $150 to Skellig for the inspection. And once it passed the inspection, then you automatically operate under the Solarize program. For new persons coming on, it's a bit more involved. It's a 3-stage process. First, you have an application with minimal, very little information. You submit an application that will probably basically give who you are, your name, address, so forth, the location of your property, an indication of the size of the solar installation, who your technician is. And we would do an inspection based on that. And also there's an application fee, I think it's $250 for that. But that application fee goes to the government. And so then we would do an inspection and determine if your property could accommodate solar PV. I'll give you an extreme example. If somebody living in a shack apply and we go and we realize that you put solar panels on the roof, the house is going to collapse, we're not going to approve it. That's basically what it's for. But once you pass that, then that gives you authority to do a detailed design of your installation. So you do that detailed design and you submit it. That detailed design would include like your drawings, your electrical drawings, and so forth, the specification sheet for your batteries, for your solar panels, and for your inverter and other equipment, and you submit that. We would do a review of it, and if you pass that review, then you are allowed to order your equipment, import your equipment, and install the equipment. Once you have installed the equipment, you then apply for an inspection. With the inspection comes another fee, this time again payable to Skellig, of another $250, I think, $250. And so once Skellig approve the installation is commissioned, you go onto the grid and you start getting your credits for put your feedback onto the grid.
The question is asked, Mr. Browne. Again, Mr. Frank, of course, you're welcome to jump in. Based on what you just said, that approval is needed. Approval is needed even before you can order anything to ensure that the facility is up to scratch, that it can accommodate. Some persons may feel that I need permission in order to order solar panels. What if I don't want to be on Solarize and I'm just comfortable having my solar system installed? Do I still have to get approval, because that approval for Solarize may be seen as a deterrent?
Once you're going to be connected to the grid, even if you don't want the incentive thing, once you're connected to the grid, you have to get approval, because if you don't have the correct equipment, and if it's not connected correctly, you could cause damage to the grid. You could cause problems to the grid. So once there's any sort of connection to the grid, you have to get approval.
And
if you're totally off the grid, no connection, then we're not involved.
Yes, and I'm not sure how many persons were aware of that, and that's an important point there. Because I myself was considering, okay, I would like to have solar panels installed, But it never occurred to me how that may damage the national grid, that really would impact every consumer in St. Kitts and Nevis. So that's a very important point.
And not just the grid, your equipment could get damaged too. If it's not the correct type of equipment.
So although you don't have to come on to solarize, it's still recommended that you come to us.
Right. Okay. And eligibility requirements. Who is eligible?
You must have a SCELEC account. That's the thing. You have to be up to date with your SCELEC payment. Apart from that, everyone, you have to show either ownership of the property, or if you're renting or leasing, you have to show document showing that the owner gave you permission to put the solar there. But everyone is eligible.
SolarRise, as you mentioned, was launched on April 30th of this year. What has been the feedback, and can you give us a sense of how many persons would have registered to participate in SolarRise?
Well, we've been getting a lot of responses. There are a good bit of people who were interested in solar or who already have systems. As it relates to applications, we've only received 2 to date. One for golden hour, so somebody who already had a system and who was already connected. They already came through our process, and so they came with the golden hour application, and there was another new application for the regular SolarRise. But we have not seen a lot of the we know that persons are interested because they requested forms, but we have not seen the applications come in just yet.
Well, why do you think that is?
They're probably getting all the documentation ready. That's what we assume. But we know that the persons already are interested or they already have systems, so we're just waiting for the applications to come through.
Right. Okay. And in terms of course, government would have offered a tax concession on alternative energy equipment. Do they have to apply to the energy unit to get that tax concession?
No. So once you bring in your equipment, you go through the regular process. It's effectively an automatic thing. The only time persons would come to us is if they may have trouble with the concessions. They will come to us and they will express that they're not getting what they're supposed to get, and we rectify that issue on our end. But generally speaking, you don't need any kind of application. You just go and bring in your stuff, and you're supposed to get your duty free.
Right, okay. And another initiative, as I mentioned at the top, that was launched during SolarRise is Drive. We're going to talk a bit more about Drive, and I think that has the capacity to impact a bit more consumers. Not everyone has a house, but it seems like almost everybody in St. Kitts and Nevis that is of legal age has a car. So we'll talk a bit more about Drive in our next break. Stay with us, viewers and listeners. We'll be right back with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to In Focus. We continue our discussion with officials from the Energy Unit, Mr. Bertill Browne, who is the director of the Energy Unit, and also Denasio Frank, who is an energy officer there. We've been discussing the roadmap towards renewables. We've been discussing SolarRise, and now we're discussing Drive, which is let me get it straight, the Carbonized Roadway Initiative for Vehicle Electrification. I recognize Minister Maynard also had to make sure that he got it right during the launch of the roadmap. So the acronym is Drive. What is Drive?
Well, Drive is effectively an initiative, as the name suggests. It is meant to drive, no pun intended, maybe pun intended, the transition to vehicle electrification. As you know, most of our fleet, the majority of our fleet is fossil fuel, is internal combustion engine, and it is in our best interest to transition to electric vehicles. And so what the Drive does, it encompasses a number of things that will make that transition. It includes the electric vehicle transition policy. It includes the electric vehicle transmission action plan, and there are strategic plans as part of it as well. It includes the incentivizing in terms of import duties, so reduction in import duties for electric vehicles, and it includes training, things of that nature. Anything that involves the transition to electric vehicles, all of that is encompassed in Drive.
Now, you mentioned during your initial presentation, during the launch of Drive, that the country's geography is ideally suited for EVs. How so?
Well, first and foremost, St. Kitts is not very mountainous compared to some other Caribbean countries.
St. Kitts and Nevis, of course.
It's not as mountainous as you would think. St. Kitts and Nevis is not that mountainous. For the most part, there is, well, even though we have hills and stuff, it's not like steep inclines and stuff of that nature. But more importantly, we are a very small country. The Federation is very small. We have about 34 to 40 miles of road in the Federation. And one of the major concerns with electric vehicles is what I call range anxiety, the distance that you can drive before you have to charge again. Now, because St. Kitts and Nevis is so small, you can actually drive your vehicle. The minister like to say, if you're going straight from work to home and back, and you're not going anywhere, diverting anywhere, you could actually drive on a full charge for a long time. That's
a long time.
So the average charge time, a full charge, between 250 to 300 miles. And to the driving distance, when we did our calculations, we're looking at somewhere between, I don't drive more than 10 kilometers a day, which works out to about, we worked out about 40 miles a day. So you're looking at a full week on one charge. And frankly, that's a very good thing for the Federation. Not only that, but persons are concerned about, would that carry up the price of my electricity? That's not the case, because especially right now the price of gasoline is above $18. The price of fuel is still this. The price of electricity has not changed. And you're using less energy to charge your vehicle and so in other words, you're spending less for the electricity than you would for the gasoline. So because of the geography of St. Kitts and Nevis, electric vehicles is prime for us to benefit from the driving those vehicles rather than to pay for gasoline.
Because of course with the price spike, as you mentioned, my vehicle right now to fill is around $150.
Right,
$150. And you're saying if I were to plug it in, it would be more cost effective for me if I had one.
Much more cost effective.
So you charging stations, because that's an important point that you mentioned at home. How difficult is it to set up a charging station? I don't imagine that you can just go and take a plug and plug it in.
So there's different types of chargers. Type 1 is where you plug straight into your wall, and most EVs, they come with the adapter that allows you to charge straight into the 110 to 20. Type 2 is what you would see like at different, like something, there's boxes that you can get to allow you to charge a vehicle much faster. So type 2 is what a lot of houses might include, might install, that allows them to charge fast at night. And then there's type 3, which is the fast charger, so you would see like in hotels and stuff like that. So type 3 and type 2 are a little more difficult. You can buy a type 2, but type 3 takes some planning to actually set up a type 3 charger. And of course the connectors, the average connector uses what they call a CCS2 connector, and that is why people might be concerned about the connection. But of course, setting up the actual the type 3 would be a little more challenging for us, and that would come from our end. As it relates to the type 2 and type 1, you can purchase a type 2 if you so wish to. And type 1, it comes with the vehicle. So you will get an adapter that allows you to plug the connector and plug straight into your 110 or 220.
And the cases where you're not able to charge your vehicle fully for whatever reason, or maybe it's just you didn't pay attention to where the levels are at, and we're assuming now, not necessarily the hybrids, but straight EVs, that it doesn't have a full charge because I can plug in town or my business or whatever. Is that something that is really practical, and how will this be rolled out, having those charging stations in public spaces?
Well, the charging stations have to be mapped out, of course. That is something that we are considering right now. Where part of Drive is a part of the action plan, the EV transition action plan, is to set up the charging stations across the Federation. Of course, we're going to have public charging stations. We're going to have, maybe you might have in the private sector will definitely look into charging stations. The policy asks for hotels to include that as part of their parking. But as it relates to, sorry, was it just remind me the question?
The question was in terms of having the charging stations in public spaces, and how practical it would be to have it around town, especially.
Well, in town might not be as practical, but on the outskirts is not a problem. As I said, the saying is very small, and so we can set up, for example, just a quick example, maybe one at the airport, a public charging station at the airport. They can get in a few charges, maybe an hour or two of charge, and the reality is how the batteries are set up, even though it is low, it does not shut down. So you can drive, and of course, because of the benefit of us being small, you can drive on low battery and get home. So the car doesn't shut down on you. You will be able to get on like gasoline when you run out of gas. That's it. But on the battery will allow you to get home at least, so you can get in a charge even at night. And it is recommended that you charge at night anyway. So
an increase in EVs and charging stations, how is that going to impact the national grid? Because then there's greater demand for energy now.
Well, that's actually part of our roadmap. These studies, the roadmap studies that we're going to be doing, they're going to be looking at all of those things. We expect an increase in demand. Of course, it is a phase, the whole thing is a phased approach. So we don't expect EVs to flood the grid anytime within the next year. And that's being realistic. But we are planning for EVs to come because there are policies that are being developed for ICE development to stop within the next maybe 10 years.
What's ICE?
Internal combustion engines. So all fossil fuels. So places like Japan, they are looking to stop production of ICE vehicles, a regular combustion engine, by 2030, 2035. And so we have to plan in advance. So the studies that we're doing are going to include the integration of EVs onto the grid. How would it impact the grid? It's hard to say just yet, to be very honest. We expect there to be an uptake, but we are taking all the precautions to make sure that it is not going to shut down the grid. So
the change to EVs, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because as you mentioned, the car manufacturers are not going to be producing them after a certain date.
No. So most countries that produce, they're looking to stop the production of ICE within the next 5 to 10 years. Some countries at 2030, Japan, which is where a lot of our vehicles come from, are looking at 2035. So we have to, there's not a matter of if, there's when, and we have commitments as well to reduce our carbon footprint. And so we don't want it to be a case where the Japan stops making ICE and they push all their old vehicles into our market. That's not going to be good for us. And so we are doing what we need to do to make sure that, first of all, the grid can accommodate the EVs. Of course, as I mentioned, the studies are going to include that. We're going to be upgrading the grid as well as part of our ongoing efforts. And then, of course, now we have Drive, which is going to help us to transition prior to all the vehicles getting pushed into our market.
It's a market question, and you may not be able to answer it. But do you get a sense that there will be more hybrids produced as opposed to straight-on EVs?
Well, from what I understand, they won't be looking into hybrids. They will be focusing more on EVs. But for our markets, right now, hybrid is a good transition. But the ideal thing is to go to EVs, because EVs that don't produce carbon are the very low impact on the environment, negligible impact on the environment. The idea is to go to EVs, to push EVs, especially because they're more expensive. And so ideally we will want to have an EV market versus the hybrid market. Of course, we can always have incentives for hybrids as well, because hybrid, as I said, is a good transition. But ideally, because of our commitments to the environment, the carbon emissions, we want to go to EVs first.
All right, and you actually just touched on my next question in terms of incentives. Why should I want to invest in an EV now as opposed to buying a vehicle that is new, that had that fuel combustion aspect of it? Why should I want to make that extra expense? Because especially if I'm taking a loan, that just drives up the price.
Savings. ironically, is this a give and take. You spend more on an EV, and I'm being very frank. You spend more for an EV, and the incentive that we have is on vehicles between new vehicles to 4 years old. So you're buying a new vehicle, which of course is going to be more expensive, but in the long run, you're going to save a lot of money on fuel, and you won't be vulnerable like I am right now to the changes in fuel prices. And so ideally, the EVs will save your money, not only on fuel, but there's less moving parts in an EV, and so you won't spend as much on maintenance. And so that is one of the main benefits. Plus, of course, the EVs are kind of high-tech, so is very interesting driving EVs. If you've ever driven in an EV, you would see that there's no noise pollution. I mean, if you like noise that vehicles have, there's models that can actually give you that kind of sound, but there's no noise pollution. There's less moving parts, so there's less money on maintenance, less money on fuel. Those are some of the benefits.
So are there incentives, Mr. Browne, in terms of encouraging persons to buy EVs in St. Kitts and Nevis? Does the government have something in place for that?
Yes. As you pointed out, the upfront cost of the EV is higher than the internal combustion engine, the conventional vehicles. And so that, but over the lifetime of the EV, it costs less than the conventional vehicle. So that upfront cost is what has been, to a large extent, preventing people. When we did our consultation, that was one of the things that they were saying, this upfront cost, how would they come up with the money? So what the government has done, it has reduced the duties on EVs to 10% from, I think it's 45% to 10%. So they have done something to address the high upfront cost of EVs. That's the incentive. And then your incentive is lower maintenance costs, lower fuel in inverted commas costs.
Now, Mr. Frank, you mentioned, of course, that in terms of the maintenance, which is an important part of it, you're saying that there will be the need for less maintenance because there's less moving parts. But in the event that there is an issue, that would be a concern to someone as well. So, if I'm having a problem with my car, who do I have to be able to fix it?
Well, there are actually trained experts for EVs in the Federation already. The dealerships, we have a few dealerships in St. Kitts, and I know for a fact that at least 2 of them have trained experts in EVs. As TDC Hosfords, they have trained experts in EVs, and of course we are doing training as well. There is a training that is offered by GSI as part of the Center of Excellence at the CFBC. They've done training as well in EV maintenance, and we've had persons from the Vehicle Maintenance Division. They have been trained in maintenance for EVs. The University of the West Indies had a training just recently, I think it was early this year. Again, persons from the government have been trained in maintenance, so there are persons who have been trained in maintenance in the Federation.
We're running short on time, so I'll ask a final question. And both of you can chime in. Solarize and drive. How do you respond to the perception or the suggestion that someone may have that say that these initiatives really only benefit persons who are wealthy? That the ordinary man on the street in Bastille or in Charlestown, the woman, they're not able to afford these changes, and also as opposed to the small businesses, they're not able to manage it. It's more so for large businesses. How do you respond to that?
Okay, well, first, the government has made an effort to incentivize it, so that would make it more attractive to the ordinary person, with the feed-in tariff for the solarized and the reduction in duties for the electric vehicles, but also because we now have regulations and a process. It has taken a lot of uncertainty out of the whole process, and so it would make it much easier for a bank to finance a project like that. So if somebody don't have the upfront cash, they could get somebody, the accountant or whoever, to crunch the numbers that they could take into the bank and show the bank that they could put in this, have savings, and use some of that savings to pay back the bank. So that would make it easier for the ordinary person to get both electric vehicle now and solar, as opposed to the more affluent persons who could have done it in the past.
Okay, and realistically, you think of it as an investment, and I would say that there are persons within the Federation who might not be considered as the big man who already have solar. We've seen small solar systems that are just as effective as the large solar systems. So I won't discourage anybody from trying to apply for solar. Solar energy, well, solar panels and stuff are getting cheaper as the years go by. There are some systems that I've seen that cost very little compared to some larger systems, and so I won't discourage anybody. Look into the options that are available and apply.
We'll leave it right there. Denasio, Frank, Energy Officer within the Energy Unit, and Bertill, Browne. Of course, you are the Director. Thank you so much for being with us on this edition of InFocus.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for this edition. We trust that you will join us next week at the same place, at the same time, for another edition. Remember, at InFocus, we discuss your government, your business. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.